As we all know, Bruce Lee's name is indelibly associated with Kung Fu and martial arts. During the course of his short career, he paved the way for a plethora of Asian stars who would rise after his tragic passing, some of whom even had the opportunity to collaborate with him on a few movies. Millions of people around the world still regard him as the absolute apex of authentic martial arts mastery and spirit 45 years after his passing. So which are the most notable Bruce Lee moments? Well, let's get started. Number 10. Enter the Dragon Cave Battle. Everyone who loves martial arts knows this one inside out, and everybody who sees Enter the Dragon for the first time always leaves with it still vivid in their thoughts for days. Bruce Lee had plenty of chances to display his skills early in the movie, but the gripping battle in the subterranean cave against the villainous Han's bodyguards made an impression unlike any other fight scene in history. Our hero calmly stands his ground against successive waves of armed guards, leaving the ground covered in hundreds of his enemies, writhing and screaming in agony. As Bruce's first leading role in a Hollywood production, this was also the first time Western viewers saw him use his signature weapon, the Nunchaku. Bruce appears to be at his most composed on screen when he spins his blade almost as fast as light before returning to his guard posture, seemingly daring his foe to go one step farther, which he foolishly does. Number 9. Nunchaku Fight in Way of the Dragon 1972. Bruce Lee uses his martial arts expertise to fill in as the bar's bouncer, while a local crime leader brings in his own specialist to take him down. Even with all the humor, we can all agree that Bruce would never let his first film as a filmmaker pass without using his reliable nunchaku at least once. The back alley fight between our hero and a group of mafia enforcers is one of the movie's best examples of comedy mixed with violence. This is when Bruce added far more comedy to Way of the Dragon than we see in the rest of his work. The enemies of Tang Lung gradually gain the bravery to approach him warily while coiling up like a python waiting to strike, only for our hero to inevitably kill them all one after another. The sequence's climax, of course, is the one person who erroneously believes he can use Bruce Lee's weapon of choice with the same level of technical precision, but ends up killing himself with a careless swing. Number 8. The Big Boss 1971 Final Fight. Apart from being a relic of a bygone era, Bruce Lee's least successful movie as the lead actor, The Big Boss, closes on such a memorable high heart-pounding combat between kung fu experts. This is a testament to his charisma and screen presence. Consider the situation from the viewpoint of our hero, who had just witnessed the murder of his entire family and the kidnapping of his cousin to sell her as a prostitute. Moreover, the build-up to the last combat teases the audiences with a level of suppressed suspense that is nearly intolerable. You know that only one of these guys will survive this confrontation, like two gunslingers meeting in a deserted town street at noon. The movie builds the suspense about who will fire first, like a rubber band before Bruce Lee takes the initiative. The move, The Big Boss, is credited for catapulting Bruce Lee to fame, and even 5 decades later, the movie's final showdown serves as a vivid reminder of how electric an impression he had on viewers back then. Number 7. Game of Death 1978 Billy Lowe vs Pasqual. The only time spectators saw Bruce Lee square off with some of his own disciples was in the incomplete Bruce Lee classic Game of Death, and Bruce's fight with the illustrious Dan Inosanto is undoubtedly one for the record books. Dan Inosanto, who is currently regarded as one of the world's foremost masters of both Taekwondo and Filipino martial arts, was one of Bruce's disciples. Bruce viewed Game of Death as a grand metaphor for his concept of adapting to his specifics of each battle, with each foe presenting a unique skill set that needed to be overcome. Even still, Game of Death only uses roughly a third of the film, so it doesn't offer you the whole picture of our hero's struggle to the top. However, despite the film's possible shortcomings, audiences are nonetheless given the opportunity to watch Bruce's one on-screen confrontation with his most well-known follower. Number 6. Enter the Dragon 1973 Lee vs O'Hara. Bruce Lee and Bob Wall worked together on Bruce Lee's directorial debut, Way of the Dragon, and later, Wall returned for reshoots to finish Game of Death, which was released after Lee's passing. But by far their most spectacular on-screen conflict was the one between the Shaolin Master Lee and the evil henchman O'Hara in Enter the Dragon. In the movie, Lee is on a mission to revenge for the death of his sister, Su Lin, in addition to restoring the honor of the Shaolin Temple following the treachery of the cruel Han, played by Angela Mao. It is obvious that our hero thinks that vengeance is best served cold. You'd have to pause to notice that Bruce first pins O'Hara's arm before striking him. Bruce needed stitches after Bob sliced his hand with a broken glass bottle at the end of the fight, which left a few real wounds. However, Wall was knocked backward by Bruce's sidekick with such force that it broke both the man's arms. Number 5. Fist of Fury, 1972, Zhen vs Petrov and Suzuki. It's understandable why Fist of Fury has remained one of Bruce Lee's most enduringly well-liked films. Often, one final battle suffices to appease the crowd, but this gives you two for the same money. As he continues to defend China's national pride from foreign occupiers, Zhen finally has the chance to exact revenge for the murder of his Sifu, Huo Yuanjia. The one-on-one battle between Bruce Lee and the evil Russian fighter Petrov may be the only one in which slow motion is used so extensively, but it only emphasizes the hero's incredible physical prowess and the intensity of the combat. But Chen's revenge was not complete until Suzuki was taken care of as well, which leads to a katana versus Nunchaku brawl that ends with possibly the most amazing flying kicks by Bruce Lee. The Fist of Fury not only lives up to its title, but also pits virtuous warriors against one another in the decisive battle. Number 4. Enter the Dragon, Hall of Mirrors. Enter the Dragon ends as our hero gets ready to launch his second vendetta of the movie, regaining his ruined honor of the Shaolin Temple from a former monk turned nasty criminal leader. The imagery of the last confrontation between Lee and the villainous Han in Enter the Dragon just cannot be exaggerated at this point, because the movie was virtually nothing more than one butt getting ruthlessly kicked after another. Han turns the tables on Lee by withdrawing into a Hall of Mirrors to gain the upper hand after our hero narrowly defeats his opponent. The kick Lee delivers to Han's head makes me laugh no matter how many times I see the movie. This also turned out to be a particularly influential plot element in contemporary action movies like Skyscraper and John Wick Chapter 2, and anyone familiar with Mortal Kombat franchise is aware of exactly how much it paid homage to the movie as well. Even the fight in the Hall of Mirrors and Liu Kang's conflict with Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat from 1995 fundamentally have the same ending. Number 3. Game of Death, Billy Lowe vs Hakim. If Bruce had lived to complete Game of Death, it very well could have been his greatest work as an action star and a director. Sadly, we can only speculate about what might have been. Nevertheless, even if we cannot realize his vision of Game of Death as a massive cinematic metaphor about the Jeet Kune Do philosophy and the adaptable character of water, he at least made it far enough to film some of his best combat scenes. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a student of Bruce's and a future NBA legend, played the towering Hakim in the film's cinematic fight. And if you take a look at the representation of Bruce's Game of Death vision, it's still incomplete, but it fulfills all of his goals in the most satisfactory way imaginable, including a more thorough confrontation with Hakim in the end. Number 2. Fist of Fury Dojo Fight. The battle scenes in Fist of Fury were generally on a level that spectators had never previously seen. Bruce was transformed into the hero representation of the Chinese people successfully resisting their foreign oppressors. In what is currently regarded as one of the greatest battle scenes in the movie history, Bruce not only destroyed a whole dojo full of enemies, but he also made them literally and symbolically eat their words by calling Chinese people the sick men of Asia. In fact, audiences outside of China were as receptive to the message. Bruce was always able to dazzle audiences with his physical prowess, but the dojo fight in Fist of Fury turned out to be one of his most symbolically and richly packed combat sequences of his career, on top of being one of his most amazing fight scenes ever. Number 1. Way of the Dragon, Tang Lung vs Colt. The climax of Way of the Dragon pits Bruce Lee against Chuck Norris in the Roman Coliseum, and like the two men competing each other on screen, it is pure legend. The two warriors engage in combat like two old gladiators, with our hero ultimately adopting a more relaxed posture to adjust to the alien nature of his enemy's method of warfare. Bruce used the Way of the Dragon conclusion as a platform to discuss his martial arts philosophy and the need to adjust to the unique circumstances of the fight and the unique skill set the opponent brings to the table, just as he later did in Game of Death. Way of Dragon pits legends against one another in a gladiatorial arena, making it a true timeless classic for fans of martial arts. The only thing that could have improved it would have been for Bruce and Chuck to both turn to the camera after their fight and yell, "Are you not entertained?" Debating Bruce's fights is usually a hot issue, so which ones were your favorites? Let us know in the comment section below. Also, go through the channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.